Have you ever felt that the voice in your head is holding you back? That constant mental chatter telling you you're not enough, that you don't deserve more, that it's better to stay where you are? Today, we're going to unmask that great lie. Because according to Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists in history, that voice is not who you really are. Take a moment and ask yourself, how many decisions have you made today based on what others expect from you? How many times have you ignored that feeling in your stomach, telling you something isn't right with your current life? Jung discovered that most of us live disconnected from our true selves, trapped in a false identity we've built to fit into the world. The problem is that this disconnection isn't harmless. Jung identified it as the root of much human suffering. When we ignore our true nature to please others or to maintain an image, we're creating an internal conflict that will eventually manifest as anxiety, depression, or that inexplicable emptiness many feel even though they seemingly have it all. Modern society has perfected the art of keeping us distracted, busy, and disconnected. Social media, consumerism, work expectations, everything is designed to take us away from our center. Jung warned about this decades before the internet existed because he understood that human beings have a natural tendency to flee from ourselves. Most people confuse their social persona with their true self, Jung said. The persona, a term he coined, is the mask we wear to function in society. And while it's necessary to some extent, the problem arises when we forget it's just a mask and start believing that's all we are. Think for a moment about the important decisions in your life. Did you choose your career because it truly resonated with your being, or because it was what was expected of you? Are you in a relationship that nourishes your soul, or one that simply fulfills what society considers right? Jung invites us to question every aspect of our lives to discover which parts are authentic and which are simply adaptations to please others. This constant limiting mental chatter didn't come from nowhere. It formed through years of conditioning, from childhood when you learned which behaviors were acceptable and which weren't. Jung called this part of our psyche the shadow, everything we repress because it doesn't fit with the image we want to project. And here comes the fascinating part. Jung discovered that the shadow, those parts we deny, contains not only our flaws but also some of our most powerful qualities. When we repress aspects of ourselves because they're not socially acceptable, we're often burying our creativity, passion, intuition, and inner strength as well. What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you. This profound observation by Jung shows us the path to freedom. It's not about fighting against that negative mental chatter, but recognizing it, understanding it, and finally integrating it. This reminds me of Maria, one of my followers who wrote to me a few months ago. She had spent her entire life trying to be the perfect daughter, wife, and mother, according to her family and community's standards. At 45, she found herself empty, without a personal identity, with a deep depression. Her mental chatter constantly told her she was worthless, outside her roles for others. When she began to explore her true repressed desires and talents, she discovered a passion for painting that she had ignored since her adolescence. Today, a year later, she has not only found her voice through art, but has inspired dozens of women in her community to do the same. This is the transformative power of reconnecting with your true self. It's not a luxury or a spiritual whim. According to Jung, it's the most important work you'll do in your life. He called it individuation, that process of integrating all parts of your psyche to become a complete and authentic being. But let's be clear, this path isn't easy. Facing your shadow means looking straight at aspects of yourself you've been avoiding for years. It's uncomfortable, sometimes painful, and definitely challenging. But as Jung said, there is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. The good news is that you don't have to do it alone. Jung developed powerful tools to help us on this journey. One of them is paying attention to your dreams. For Jung, dreams are direct messages from your unconscious. that deep part of you that knows your true nature. Starting to record your dreams, to reflect on them, can open doors to aspects of yourself you've ignored. Another fundamental tool is observing your intense emotional reactions. Jung discovered that when someone or something irritates you deeply without an apparent reason, you're probably facing a projection of your shadow. Those defects that bother you so much in others are often unrecognized aspects of yourself. Ask yourself, what kind of people provoke immediate rejection in you? What qualities do you find intolerable in others? Right there, you can find valuable clues about parts of yourself you've repressed. Synchronicity was another fascinating concept that Jung introduced to the world. Those seemingly casual but meaningful events that seem to guide you in a direction. Have you ever thought about someone and received their call minutes later? Or found exactly the information you needed at the precise moment? Jung didn't believe these were simple coincidences, but manifestations of a deeper connection between your inner world and the outer one. When you begin to live from your true self, these synchronicities increase. It's as if the universe responds to your authenticity, opening doors you couldn't even see before. But to experience this, you must first be willing to let go of control, to trust something bigger than your ego and your mental chatter. Let's go back to that critical voice in your head for a moment. Jung identified that much of this mental chatter comes from what he called the complex, a grouping of charged thoughts, memories, and emotions that form around a specific theme. For example, you might have an inferiority complex formed by past experiences where you felt inadequate, reinforced by negative comments from authority figures. What's interesting is that these complexes function almost like autonomous personalities within us. They have their own agenda and energy. When you find yourself thinking, "I'll never be good enough," or "I always ruin everything," it's not really your authentic voice speaking. It's the complex. Jung taught us that to free ourselves from the tyranny of these complexes, we must first recognize them as entities separate from our true selves. You are not your negative thoughts. You are not that critical voice. You are the one who can observe that voice and choose not to identify with it. This distinction is absolutely crucial. Most modern therapies and self-help techniques are based on this Jungian principle, the ability to separate your identity from your automatic thoughts. As Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Now, this work of self-knowledge doesn't just benefit you. Jung was one of the first to recognize that our individual evolution directly impacts the collective. When you do the work of integrating your shadow, you're not just transforming yourself. You're contributing to the healing of all humanity. What we reject in ourselves, we project onto others. This observation by Jung explains why there's so much conflict in the world. Wars, racism, intolerance, all are large-scale manifestations of our inability to integrate our own shadow. When you hate yourself, that hatred inevitably projects outward. That's why choosing the path of authenticity is a revolutionary act. In a world that constantly pushes you to conform, to follow the herd, deciding to be who you truly are requires extraordinary courage. As Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. But how do you start this journey to your true self? Jung offered us a detailed map that remains incredibly relevant today. First, recognize your persona, that social mask you've created. Observe how it changes depending on the context, how you behave differently at work, with your family, or with close friends. There's nothing inherently wrong with these adaptations, but it's essential to recognize they're just roles, not your complete identity. Second, start paying attention to your intense emotional reactions. When something bothers you disproportionately, ask yourself, what is this showing me about myself? Instead of blaming the exterior, use those situations as mirrors. Third, cultivate a relationship with your unconscious through dreams, meditation, art, or any activity that allows you to access that space beyond rational thought. Jung was a great advocate for creative expression as a way to connect with deeper parts of ourselves. Fourth, pay attention to your synchronicities, those meaningful events that seem too perfect to be coincidences. Jung saw these moments as signs that you're on the right path. And fifth, perhaps most important, accept the paradox. Jung discovered that the human psyche is full of contradictions. You can be strong and vulnerable, logical and intuitive, independent and needing connection. True integration doesn't mean eliminating these polarities, but embracing them as equally valid parts of you. Let's take the example of Charles, a high-level executive who came to one of my conferences. His whole life, he had built his identity around material success and rationality. He repressed his emotions, his sensitivity, considering them weaknesses. When his marriage collapsed and he began suffering panic attacks, he realized something fundamental was missing in his life. Through work with Jungian principles, Charles discovered a deeply empathetic and intuitive part of himself that he had been denying. Far from weakening him, integrating these feminine aspects, as Jung would call them, of his psyche, made him a more effective leader and a more complete person. Today, he helps other executives find that same balance. Charles's story illustrates another fundamental concept of Jung, the anima and animus. Jung proposed that all of us, regardless of our gender, have masculine and feminine aspects in our psyche. The anima is the feminine aspect in man, and the animus, the masculine aspect in woman. Integrating these aspects is essential for our complete development. When you repress the anima or animus, that energy doesn't disappear. It becomes unconscious and begins to manifest in distorted ways. A man who completely denies his anima may become excessively rigid, emotionally disconnected, or project all his emotional needs onto the women in his life, creating dependent relationships. A woman who rejects her animus may have difficulty establishing boundaries or manifesting her power in the world. Jung taught us that true strength comes from integration, not denial. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage in its purest form. Sensitivity is not an obstacle to success, it's a powerful tool of perception and intuition. This integration is especially relevant in our relationships. Jung observed that we often feel attracted to people who represent unrecognized parts of ourselves. That instant attraction, that inexplicable chemistry, frequently indicates that person is reflecting aspects of your shadow, for better or worse. This explains why so many relationships follow repetitive patterns. If you haven't integrated certain parts of yourself, you'll continue to be attracted to people who reflect them, recreating the same conflicts over and over. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat. We keep attracting similar situations until we learn the lesson they contain. The good news is that when you begin to do this inner work, your relationships naturally transform. You no longer need others to complete missing parts of yourself. You no longer project your unconscious wounds onto those around you. This doesn't mean relationships become perfect, but authentic, based on who people really are, not what you project onto them. This type of authentic relationships are increasingly rare in our current society. We live in the era of image, where what seems to matter more is how others perceive us than who we really are. Social media has amplified this tendency, creating an environment where external validation has become addictive. Jung anticipated this problem. He warned about the dangers of massification, that process where individuals abandon their authenticity to conform with the expectations of the mass. He believed this abandonment of genuine individuality was dangerous not only for personal psychological well-being, but for society as a whole. The salvation of the world consists in the salvation of the individual, he wrote. For Jung, each person who does the work of connecting with their true self is contributing to the evolution of collective consciousness. Each time you choose authenticity over conformity, you're creating waves that impact far beyond your personal life. This is especially relevant in times of crisis and uncertainty like those we live in. Jung lived through 2 world wars and observed how the massive disconnection of people from their true nature facilitated the spread of destructive ideologies. When people don't have a solid connection with their center, they are easily manipulated. That's why reconnecting with your true self isn't a luxury or a spiritual hobby. It's an urgent necessity, both for your well-being and for the future of our species. As Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." This choice is available to you in every moment. No matter how long you've lived disconnected from your essence, you can always turn around and begin the journey back home. Jung discovered that even people who had spent decades repressing their authentic nature could awaken to a new way of being. The first step is simple but profound. Pause. Stop the autopilot. Create spaces in your day to simply be without constant external stimulation. In those moments of stillness, begin to differentiate between the conditioned mental chatter and your authentic voice. Your authentic voice is usually quieter, but more accurate. It doesn't speak from fear or lack, but from clarity and fullness. It doesn't tell you what you should do according to external standards, but what deeply resonates with your being. A powerful practice Jung recommended was reflective writing. Take a notebook and write without censorship, allowing what needs to be expressed to emerge. Often, you'll be surprised by the wisdom that arises when you give space to your inner voice. Another invaluable tool is active imagination, a technique developed by Jung, where you enter into conscious dialogue with different aspects of your psyche. Imagine you can converse with that critical part of yourself, or with that creative aspect you've repressed. Ask what it needs, what it's trying to protect, what it wants to express. This type of inner work may seem abstract, but its effects are deeply practical. People who take this Jungian journey report greater clarity in decision-making, more satisfying relationships, amplified creativity, and a general sense of peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. As Sarah, a follower who began this work a year ago, told me, "For the first time in my life, I feel I'm living my own life, not the one others wrote for me. Decisions are easier because I can distinguish between external noise and what I really want." And the most surprising thing is that the right people began to appear in my life, almost as if by magic. That magic is what Jung called synchronicity. When you live in alignment with your true self, the universe seems to conspire in your favor. Not because it's manipulating circumstances, but because you can finally see and take advantage of opportunities that were always there. This brings me to a crucial question. How do you know if you're living from your true self or from your false identity? Jung offered us some revealing signs. When you live from your false identity, you feel a constant need for external validation. Your decisions are based on what others will think. You feel drained after social interactions because you're constantly acting. Criticism devastates you because it threatens the image you've built, and you experience that inexplicable emptiness, that feeling that something fundamental is missing in your life, even though you have it all. In contrast, when you live from your authenticity, you possess a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on others' approval. You can be alone without feeling lonely. Criticism may hurt, but doesn't destroy your sense of worth. You experience frequent moments of synchronicity. Your relationships are deep and nourishing, not constant dramas. And you have a sense of purpose that transcends external goals like money or status. The good news is that you don't need to reach a perfect state of authenticity. Jung emphasized that this is an ongoing process, not a final destination. Each small step toward your truth counts. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, you're strengthening that connection with your essence. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, said Jung. This privilege is available to you right now, regardless of your past, your current situation, or the expectations others have placed on you. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to live completely from your truth. What decisions would you make differently? What relationships would you keep, and which would you let go? What talents or passions would you express that you've been repressing? How would your relationship with yourself change? This vision isn't an unattainable fantasy. It's your birthright, your essential nature beneath all the layers of conditioning, and the world desperately needs you to reclaim it. As Jung said, the world today hangs by a thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of man. In an era of global crisis, environmental, social, political, we need more than ever people who have done the work of integration, who operate from their authentic center rather than from fear and disconnection. Each time you choose to face your shadow instead of projecting it, each time you choose authenticity over conformity, each time you dare to be who you really are, you're contributing to the collective healing of our species. This is Carl Jung's most powerful legacy, his understanding that individual and collective work are inseparable, that by healing yourself, you're healing the world, that by reclaiming your authentic voice, you're helping others find theirs. The mental chatter that has kept you small, fearful, and disconnected has been deceiving you all your life. It's not the voice of truth or wisdom. It's the voice of conditioning, of fear, of old wounds that were never healed. Your true self is infinitely vaster, wiser, and more powerful than that voice has led you to believe. As Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. It's time to wake up, to reclaim the lost parts of yourself, to recognize that the voice in your head is not who you really are. It's just a small fraction of your total magnitude. This awakening isn't just for you. The world is waiting for your authentic voice, your unique gifts, your full presence. As Jung said, the meaning of life is to find yourself. Life isn't about finding, but about creating. I invite you to start today. One small step toward your truth, one small action aligned with your essence, and then another and another, until, day by day, moment by moment, you return home to yourself. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me which part touched your heart most deeply. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications for more content to help you on this journey of self-discovery. And remember, your mental chatter has been deceiving you. What you really are is beyond any limitation your mind has created. As Jung said, be what the world could be instead of accepting it for what it seems to be. The same principle applies to you. Don't accept yourself for what your limited mind says you are. Dare to discover what you could really be. Thank you for being here, for your presence, for your courage to look within. Your journey matters more than you imagine. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the depths of what it means to be truly human and authentic in a world that tries to mold you in its image. The transformation you seek is just one decision away. The decision to be real, to be you, without apologies or justifications. As Jung said in one of his most powerful phrases, you become what you choose to be. Choose to be who you really are.